Senate Insurance and Labor. Thursday, March 13th. We got a lot going on in Senate Insurance, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Do have a quorum today. I'm going to ask my Vice Chairman to open us in a word of prayer.
All right. He asked me to encourage, and I said, we don't have to come back tomorrow. That's the word of encouragement. But then we need Almighty, His wisdom. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for the day. We thank you for life, liberty, and freedom. And Father, we ask that you give us wisdom and discernment as we look at the bills that are before us, that, Father, we would do that which is best for the people of Georgia. And, Father, that we would be mindful of you in all that we do. In Christ's name, amen.
Thank you. All right, I'll call the meeting to order. We've got a lot of bills in this committee, and we're going to try to tackle 4 today, and we're going to try to do it expeditiously but thoroughly. One of them we had a hearing on Tuesday, House Bill 422, so hopefully we'll just mostly be focused on the changes there. Maybe it won't take very long, but we're going to start. I'm going to, Representative Kelly, I'm going to go out of order here and ask Representative Hawkins to present House Bill 197. I think it's might require less discussion, and we'll go from there. So we're looking at LC 461010. Is that what you have, Chairman? Okay, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is, I'll do this quickly. This is a simple bill. This is an addition to what we have in code now on the call system, or the system that, say, when there's a medical necessity question on a procedure. Right now, we'll get a call sometime during the day. We may be with a patient. This was actually, I went through this myself, but was reminded about this back last spring with a cardiologist friend of mine, and the later a neurosurgeon. So the active part of this bill is on line 21, and what it's saying is such efforts shall include contacting the treating provider or his designee, implementing a callback telecommunications system, or the use of secure website whereby the provider or designee may elect to receive a scheduled communication at a later time. So that means if we are with a patient and we cannot come to the phone, then there's a time arranged at a later time for us to talk to that person on the medical necessity. That's it. Oh, this was agreed to by the insurance folks. Actually, Jesse Wethington wrote this legislation, who I have a lot of respect for, and he agreed with the need. So the insurance industry is fine with this. And it's just a few companies that were engaged in this type of thing, so it's not a problem.
This will allow our healthcare providers to take care of our constituents better, it seems like to me.
It would,
more efficient
yes, it would speed
manner.
up access to health care. Yeah.
All right, any questions on House Bill 197? All right, I don't see any. Oh, we do have. Jesse, do you want to speak to this? Sorry, I didn't see that at first. Go ahead. Introduce yourself, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. My name is Jesse Withington. I'm the president of the Georgia Association of Health Plans. I wanted to thank the sponsor, Representative Hawkins, for working with us on this issue. This is one that he brought to us middle of the year last year. We were able to work together. We don't always agree on everything, but we do agree that it makes sense to lower administrative burdens for providers and patients where we can. So we thought this bill was a good step in that direction. Several carriers were already engaged in this practice, and so we wanted to be permissive. That's what you see in the approach of the bill in front of you, but we think this will be a good step for providers and patients.
Any questions for Jesse? All right, I don't see any questions. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move to pass on LC 461010.
All right, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion or amendments? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Pose like sign. Passes unanimously and be in Chairman Brass's committee. Good luck with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, who's, Dr. Hawkins, who's gonna carry that in the, Sen- okay, thank you very much. All right, House Bill 348, Representative Bruce Williamson. I don't know that he was able to be with us today. This is a captive insurance bill. And maybe, Bryce, would you help me with this? And I have some notes about it too somewhere, unless I left them on my desk. Bryce, tell us about this bill. Introduce yourself.
Of course. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bryce Rawson, Director of Legislative Affairs with the Georgia Insurance Commissioner's Office. House Bill 348, it is a short bill. So first, I want to get into the background just a little bit, and I'll try and be brief about what a captive insurance company is. So a captive insurance company is essentially, you have a company that is insuring kind of itself. So if I have, Bryce Rawson, we'll say hardware store, I can open up Bryce Rawson captive insurance company that is only going to insure my own risk. So this is not a public-facing insurance company. So you cannot go and sell policies to consumers. This is a completely internally facing company. So first, I believe you have a kind of a front and back one-page document in your folders. I believe Section 3 of the bill, the first thing it's going to do, it strikes the current lines of business that captives are allowed to write. Right now, there's only 5 that captive companies can write: casualty, marine, property, surety, transportation, and workers' comp. Those are the only lines that captives are allowed to write, but right now, we want to make our state a more competitive state for captives. Right now, I think our biggest competitors are our neighboring states. One of them being Tennessee. They have several more captives than we do, and it's an industry. And 2022 is a $2.5 billion industry. We can bring jobs to Georgia by allowing captives to write additional lines of insurance. For example, if I want to, in that hardware store example, if I want to offer life insurance to my employees, I would now be able to do so under House Bill 348. And I do have some friends in the audience as well who can speak to the sections 1 and 2 of the bill. I may have them come up here and join me in just a second. But there are sections 1 and 2. What it's going to do is allow captive companies an additional way for investment. So for catastrophe bonds is a kind of it's a reverse example. So in a catastrophe bond, you invest outwards. For an insurance company, you invest outwards, and if you do not have to pay out if that bond is not gone through, then you would get the return, the investment on that. What this bill allows you to do is instead it allows outside investors to invest into the financial requirements that insurers are allowed to have or supposed to have by our office. So you have to have certain reserve funds for an insurance company. What this allows you to do is outside investors, you can go in, you can invest in there, and if those reserves are not depleted, if there is no major disaster that you have to pay claims out for, the investors, they can get their return on that. And that is the essence, the short of this bill.
So, Bryce, the captive insurance companies are still capitalized and regulated and monitored by the insurance commissioner like other traditional insurance companies, and they have to, they have a review and subject to audit and all that stuff by the insurance commissioners, just like other insurance companies. But they're used to, in the example you gave, to insure an individual company's risk. So we may have a Fortune 500 company domiciled in Georgia. Currently, the restrictions we have under our captive insurance laws, they may be having to create a captive to serve, maybe use the group term life example for their employees. They would have to go to Tennessee or another state to be able to establish that captive. We want them to be able to establish that here in Georgia. It would generate additional premium tax for us and also makes us a more business-friendly state, and we can grow, hopefully, our insurance industry through kind of modernizing our captive statutes. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir. All that is correct. You know, nothing in this legislation is going to preclude these captive companies from going around our regulations. They're still going to be subject to all the rules and regulations brought by our Insurance Reg Division and our Insurance Financial Oversight Division. That is correct.
All right. My vice chairman has a question, I believe.
May I ask a couple of questions, just curious, and we're seeing captives more and more. Are captives subject to any kind of type of assessment, just like the other insurance companies are subject to assessments? If we have a problem, we can assess those carriers. Is that true also of the captive itself?
That is correct. We still do have full, regulatory oversight of captives.
Of
That
the
is correct.
captives, okay. Also, in line 22, I noticed that there's a striking there that is, may reinsure only risk of the organizing domestic reinsurer, and that is being stricken, and I assume that allows them to go outside of, from a domestic standpoint, they can go to Lloyd's or whoever they need to go to. That's expanding their capabilities for reinsurance, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the last part is 44 through 50. That you're striking that whole section of code, and I assume that is any line of insurance that captive wants to do. That could be, does that include life as well as property casualty? Is it a blanket, if you will, from that standpoint?
That is deemed reasonable by the Commissioner's Office, yes, sir. So we will be able to go in and review their statements, and if we feel that it is not reasonable, if they don't have the capability to offer that, then we're not going to let them. We're not going to approve it. So they still have to demonstrate that they are ready. They have the backing to do so.
And the captives, as a general rule, do not have an AM Best rating. They're leaning off of, or either they're using somebody's paper as a front to guarantee that, or have a rating. Am I correct?
I would have to get back with you on that one.
Okay.
I'm not aware of the backs.
Because they would
I
not
don't
be rated by
think-
AM Best. That was my question.
Well, Jeremy or somebody might know better, but they're not selling to
Right.
others, so I don't think they're having to use anybody's paper per
Okay.
se. I think they're ABC Captive Insurance Company or Bryce Hardware Captive Insurance Company. And
Okay.
I don't think they're using other,
Okay.
because they're not selling to.
They're not selling to the general public. This is all for a specific group as such. Okay.
Yes, that is correct, sir.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
So I did have a question, that's something you asked. So we still have the insolvency fund, correct? And they would have to pay into the captives pay into the,
Captives are not involved in the insolvency fund.
Okay.
And so that is why the Commissioner's Office takes great care in ensuring that they are solvent and that, we have a very active hand in rehabilitating these entities should they become troubled.
okay. All right, who's 5? Chairman Cowser?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 3, it lists the current types of reinsurance or insurance that captives are allowed to issue. Do you know the reason for that? I mean, why did we originally limit captives just to casualty coverage, property, surety, marine, and transportation? And this allows the commissioner to just pick what other kinds of coverage he wants, if he deems them reasonable. I just wondered the policy reason why we originally limited captives, the type of coverage they could issue.
Looking at the statutory creation throughout time, things have been added on in time. In the traditional sense, these were established as property and casualty for, say, a retailer in traditional sense. As captives have become more sophisticated, their desires to be able to offer additional lines of business have come forth. Some now operate offering help, and this we view as allowing for those future changes to occur without having to come back every single time and ask for an explicit carve out for this one particular line, and then maybe 2 or 3 years later having to do the same sort.
All right, so right now, it sounds like life insurance is what some of these captives want to do. But that's the only example y'all are giving, so we could just add number 5 here on line 51 and say life insurance, and we could authorize that. Instead, we're letting the commissioner just pick whatever other lines he thinks are appropriate.
That would be certainly one way to get around that. There have been discussions with regards to cyber insurance and how on the front end, that could be deemed, most certainly would be deemed to be a casualty event, but the downstream effects of that might look at different types of lines that we haven't really worked with as of yet. So that's why the proposition was put forward to open it up to see what, if the commissioner and the staff at OCI can deem that this is a reasonable policy and you know, works well through the actuarial analysis, then that wouldn't, just the explicit lines wouldn't be a prohibition.
Thank you.
And Jeremy, I know I kind of called you up almost, but would you introduce yourself for the record, please?
Absolutely, sir. My name is Jeremy Betts. I'm executive counsel to Commissioner John F. King.
Thank you. All right, Senator Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My concept of a captive insurance company is if there's a failure of the captive insurance company, the financial damage is limited to the people to the entities in the captive group, right?
That is correct. It would
Okay.
flow back to the parent.
So what's the difference between captive insurance and self-insurance?
Captive, by the formation of a captive insurance company, it allows for that company to then have access to the reinsurance market.
Okay.
And so they're assigned an NAIC number and thus are able to carve up
So you're
different
basically
tranches.
taking out the middleman and,
That is correct, sir.
okay, I got you. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Quick questions. What percentage of the overall premiums that are paid through captives? Do you know that number? Is it 5%, 10%? Because I know some of the major corporations are in captives or they're self-insured.
With respect to the entire market versus what a captive pays, I can get you that number. I know the figures that we work with most recently is about 2.89 billion in premiums were written. I think that was for calendar year 23. We have in front of you 2.5 and 22,
Right.
and that number has increased, of course.
And unlike the standard, I'm gonna call it the standard market, they are not subject to assessments. If we have failures of other carriers, standard carriers of any kind, they are not subject to the assessment that the other carriers are subject to, correct?
That is correct, but also the more traditional carriers are not subject to the potential losses of captive. So they're carved up
Yes.
differently from there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, what's the will of the committee on LC 520715, House Bill 348? Got a motion to pass, a second. Any other discussion? Was anybody signed up to talk about this? I forgot that. Okay. All right, what's the will of the committee? All in favor of motion to pass signify by raising your hand. Got 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed, like sign, 2. All right, 4-2, bill passes and it's on to rules. All right. Okay. Representative McCollum is back. House Bill 422. This is, just as a refresher, this was the high deductible health plan and allowing for payroll deduction for contributions to the high deductible savings, to the health savings account, which would give an advantage to the state employees with some tax savings, and they get the tax savings spread out over the year instead of having to wait till they do their tax return the following year, and then the state would save money on their FICA match, and the employee would save money on the FICA match. So, which is 7.65 for the state and 7.65 for the employee. And we had some changes that were needed, and so we did the hearing, and we now have a committee sub for that with the changes that we discussed Tuesday.
So the sub is LC 550597S.
All right, let me get organized here. Sorry about that. Take that. So it's House Bill 422, LC 550597S, should be in your folder. And then there's a fiscal note in your folder related to the previous bill number.
That's correct. The fiscal note was actually to the old bill, but you can disregard the front page, but you can actually see the savings that the state and the employees would save on the second page. I've submitted the fiscal note before session started, and the only way we can get another one. But the fiscal note that's there was actually the old way that we were doing it. This way will be a lot different as far as cost to the state, we feel like.
So walk us through the changes from what we heard Tuesday, I guess.
The changes would be on line 22, so we changed that to on or before January the 1st of 2028. And then the other change would be on 26 and 27, which I'll read the whole thing. Provides that any bid proposal accepted by the board for such high deductible health plans are cost neutral. And that's the changes that the department wanted to change. They're here, they're in agreement on the sub.
All right. Any questions for the bill sponsor? Senator Merritt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not really a question for the sponsor, but I do think we had SB 267 as well. I know it's too late to have considered that one, but was there a reason we considered for HB 422 over SB 267 because they were very much alike?
So you must have missed our last meeting.
No, I was here.
You were here.
Yes, sir.
So we heard testimony from the sponsor of SB, whatever that SB number you just said.
267.
And his, to be honest, you know, we passed that bill for him, and it got vetoed.
Right, but we didn't bring it up
Oh, we had
again this session.
we had a robust discussion about it on Tuesday, and why, you know, the part dealing with the teachers and all that stuff. We talked about the payroll systems and went into all that. But I mean, that we can't, you know, why would we want to keep going down the same path and beating our head against the same wall? It got vetoed. I had no reason to think it wouldn't get vetoed again. This is a little different approach. I did want to have the senator here because it was a great.
Yeah. And I understand that, Mr. Chairman. We could have subbed out whatever the problem was. With
You
some
didn't
of the
bring
language.
that suggestion to me till
That's a fair
till
point.
now. So,
It's a fair point.
all right, thank you. Number 7 is my vice chair.
We've looked at this, we've seen something similar to this before, because I remember this from last year. I think we looked at the thing on the health savings accounts that were there. So this is just that with a little modification.
Yes,
And we did hear it Tuesday.
Tuesday, too.
So you-
Senator
were you
Merritt's
sick or-
point,
Yeah, I was
the one that
Oh,
passed
sorry.
last year
Okay.
but we tweaked it, because the way it was worded, and then the department, you know, obviously they didn't feel like they could implement it the way it was written last year.
That's what I remember, and
Yes, sir.
I was out Tuesday sick, so I'm catching back up. But I remember this, and in fact, I did some consulting with it because I think it's a great bill. It's a good way to save money for everybody.
Thank you.
Good.
All right. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Just, when we heard this before, I think the date that was in there was January 1st of 2029,
Yes,
as opposed to 2028.
yeah, we put, January 1st of 2028, and the department's fine with that.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion to pass.
Motion to pass from the vice chair.
Second.
Second from Senator Kirkpatrick. Further discussion, amendments? All right, all in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, like sign. All right, 1, 2, 3. I got you. Nothing's easy for me today. I'm telling you. I think it's 5-1. So anyway, appreciate you, Senator Merritt. Valid comments. We just probably should have got on it earlier. Thank you. Good luck
Thank
in
you.
rules.
Thank you, committee.
All right. Now, we had to wait on everybody to get a copy because we had a very, very last minute committee sub offered, and I wanted all the committee members to have it in their folder. This is on House Bill 196 relating to pharmacy benefit managers and independent pharmacists. Representative Kelly, you can come forward. This is going to be a hearing only because we had a last minute arrival with the sub, and I'm not going to put y'all in a position of having to try to vote on a sub that you're just now seeing, and I just saw it at about 3:30 myself. So, but it's floor is yours. You can explain. I think what we ought to do. Do you have a copy of the sub?
I have the sub in front of you. Yes,
Let's
sir,
just
Mr. Chairman.
go through the sub. Everybody got the sub? LC 570274S.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and I apologize for bringing a late sub. I wasn't thrilled to have to do that. I got moving through the process when we passed this bill unanimously through the House. We were working with DCH, and they had asked us as we moved through this process with the Senate that they may come with some additional suggestions. I got those around 6:30 last night. Was able to sit down with them about 9 o'clock this morning to start going over them. By the time we kind of went back and forth, we got to the Ledge Council about 1:45, and I got it. I literally walked it from Legislative Council when I was bringing it to you. So I understand the process here. House Bill 196 is a measure that the General Assembly has taken up the policy position over the last couple of years. It's measures aimed at helping our independent pharmacists as they're trying to navigate a climate now dealing with our PBMs in our state. And I know the Senate has taken some strong positions on that this year as well as last year. The House has done the same. Last year we worked jointly to pass a measure that was ultimately vetoed because an appropriation did not get made for the cost that it could have had to our state health benefit plan. In the off season, we've tried to rectify that, and that's where we got the House Bill 196. But it's seeking to solve a problem that we're seeing in each and every one of our communities, and that's the evaporation and the decimation of our independent pharmacies. Those frontline medical providers who, a lot of our constituents, especially in rural Georgia, when they go pick up their prescription, they'll mention maybe something they have going on to their local pharmacist. Unfortunately, they're being ran out of the market by some of our unsavory business practices from our PBMs. There's been conversations that have gone on in this building as to how we could rein those in. There's some mechanisms that we can maybe undertake, but we know specifically we can help control the PBM that administers our state health benefit plan. And so what House Bill 196 does is create a formula for reimbursement that will be consistent across the board for the PBMs and our independent pharmacies, because we've seen the PBMs at some points treating themselves and their retail pharmacies different than they're treating the independents that aren't affiliated with them. It does that by creating a ceiling and a floor approach, and I think that's important. It sets a NADAC pricing formula in addition to a dispensing fee. That takes place on lines 52 through 64. You'll see on line 55 it says, starting on 52, it says, an insurer shall reimburse a pharmacy for a drug dispensed to a covered person for self-administration to Select Health Benefit Plan in an amount equal to, and here's where the formula starts, A, the NADAC pricing, the National Average Drug Acquisition Cost, and then on line 60, a dispensing fee, $10.50 for chain pharmacies, $11.50 for our independent pharmacies. We think it's important to have a floor in that dispensing fee, but we also think it's important to have a ceiling where we reference this NADAC pricing. That NADAC pricing, we have seen some of our PBMs, and even on our state health benefit plan, these PBMs taking the NADAC price for a prescription, say $45, and the cost that they're charging our state health benefit plan being over $1,000. We've seen massive markups on these drugs, and so having that ceiling helps us capture some savings to our state health benefit plan and allows us taking those savings to create the floor of reimbursement for our both our chains and our independent pharmacies. That is simply what the bill does. I will walk through the changes from when it passed the House. And these changes, again, came at the request and through conversations with DCH over the last 8 hours. I knew they were coming at some point, but we got them and started working on the last 8 hours. Lines 14, we added a definition of independent pharmacy. On lines 62 through 64, DCH requested that we give them some flexibility of the floor and ceiling model in case certain chains would require a higher reimbursement rate above the NADAC and the dispensing fee. And right now, the PBMs are just taking that. They're just charging whatever above that NADAC now. But DCH had a concern that they wouldn't have enough ability to negotiate with providers to keep them in the markets. We don't want to shrink markets. We want to help expand it. So on line 62, we put in an opportunity for the state health benefit plan through DCH to negotiate individual circumstances where they can go above the formula set above. And then lines 68 through 72 deal with an important part of the enforcement mechanism. In the House, we had passed an enforcement mechanism that would have created a private right of action against a PBM who wasn't following this model. We decided, working through the department, to instead take away that right of action and give enforcement mechanisms to the Commissioner of Insurance as they do other plans. Those are the changes that came over from the House, as well as the underlying goal of the bill, Mr. Chairman. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Representative. Is there a fiscal note on this?
Yes, sir, and I thought we had delivered that to y'all. I know we put in an appropriation already on the House side for the fiscal note.
It is.
And that's in the budget that we sent over here to y'all.
Okay.
That he was a committee, he was a committee chairman that came to.
It's all right. Any questions of the author? Yes, sir.
Hey, Trey. Question about line 68. How many bills from the House have y'all sent us adding a new private right of action?
Well, I'm not exactly sure how many, but I took it out on this when I came to present it to y'all today.
Well, this is on the substitute.
Yeah, on the substitute, I took it out.
Okay. Well, no, line 68, it's,
So,
okay.
so the sub is two sub, it's another sub.
We're looking at two subs. Thank you for
Okay.
clarifying. That's what I was, okay. The sub of the sub.
Okay, yeah, I don't have I have 570274S.
You should have that.
I think that was
too.
a committee sub from the House.
That's
That may
what
be
we're-
why that looked.
Okay. Just in all this talk about SB 68, you know, talking about private right of action, I get kind of squirrely. So, thank you.
I understand. I felt like this, go on and show an effort to reduce litigation costs and we want to get rid of that private right of action that we had put in.
Thank you.
Representative on line 60 and 61, just curious, what's the history of that disparity there in the two different dispensing fees? Is that in line with what we currently do, or?
That is something we've seen other states approaches, other states have taken. Right now, there's no minimum dispensing fee. That's the floor that we're creating in this model. There at times there have been
I just wondered, I mean, chain pharmacies is $10.50 minimum, a floor of $10.50, and then independents $11.50.
yes, sir.
Didn't we do something a little extra for independent pharmacy on their dispensing fee last year? Do you know?
Previously, I think we did try to work in like a $3 minimum. That's helped
A little bit.
some of the bloodletting, but we're still seeing these struggles stay open.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Can you give me an example? Let's take, with this chain versus independent, and you're starting, I think, in 55 through 61. You're basically trying to level the playing field. And as I see here in your national average drug prices there, plus there's a dispensary fee. So there's the product itself, then there's a dispensing fee that goes with that. And that price in A, is that the same for both parties?
Today, it's not.
Okay,
We're seeing the PBM who operates retail pharmacies
Right.
themselves
right?
pay themselves at a much higher rate than they're paying the independent pharmacies,
Okay,
and that's the problem.
okay,
And that's the crux of what we're trying to fix here. But and also by setting that NADAC price, that's where we get the ceiling.
right.
That's where we get the opportunity for the state to capture some savings, and the state health benefit plan to capture some savings by not allowing them to charge, multiple X's of the NADAC price like they're doing on some drugs today.
And this is a hearing only. I was going to say, and I'm assuming you're coming back. We're going to. Am I correct? We're
If
hearing
I'm invited.
Right. No doubt about it. Okay. I think even examples of where there is that disparity, if you could show that, I think that helps us better understand what we're dealing with from that standpoint. But I agree with you, is that we need to level the playing field and know what's being charged. Because I hate to say this, most of the time, if our copay's met, we don't care. I have even found this where I ask about, what if I pay cash? And sometimes it's cheaper to pay cash than it is to pay the copay. So I think that's a part that I would just, if there's an example coming back, I think that'd be worth looking at just from that standpoint.
Some of that is referenced in the fiscal note, but I do have specific drug reimbursement rates.
Okay.
But I'll tell you a story that I told on the House floor that came to me from one of my colleagues out of Ocilla, Georgia. Their pharmacist called them when they heard we were looking at this measure, and they said, over the weekend, I reimbursed 2 drugs, and through PBMs. One was a child cancer drug. One was a drug for a senior citizen that they need to survive. The pharmacist told them that they lost $600 combined on those filling those 2 prescriptions. But they did it because if they didn't give it to them, there wasn't anyone local that child who needed that cancer drug and the senior citizen who needed their drug were going to be able to get them. That's the problem we're trying to address here.
All right, got a question, Senator Kirkpatrick?
Yeah, I actually have 2 questions, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
The first one is, I'm a little confused by the fiscal note. because of the disparity between the additional cost for DCH and the savings for USG. And when I look at the second page of that, I'm not seeing anything about drug costs. I'm seeing a lot of software and regulatory support and things like that. Can you explain that?
Well, there are savings that are shown by capping at the NADAC, okay? But the PBM has gone to, because the PBM has now came to DCH and said, because you're gonna make us do it this way, we're gonna have to charge y'all an increased administration fee due to the software. And until we can get a new contract negotiated, which DCH, I appreciate, is working on a new RFP now, but until we do, we're a little bit at the mercy of these PBMs, and it's a shame.
Okay, and then one other question, different subject, on line 68 and 69, where we're talking about the enforcement by the insurance commissioner. I've been sort of tracking some of this because of the reporting requirements we've already put in place for various things with the insurance commissioner's office. How would that actually work? Because I don't see a reporting requirement in there in line 68 and 69. I'm just wondering if that would just be by complaints or?
I think a lot of it would be complaint driven.
Okay, thanks.
All right, I don't see any further questions. We're gonna have somebody's raising their hand. We had a sign-up sheet to speak to this, so I don't know. Do we have anybody signed up to speak? Representative, thank you very much. We're gonna meet, so this is my plan now. I've got to do my appropriations subcommittee work on Tuesday, starting at 2. It's in this room, and I expect that to last. My normal meeting time on Tuesday is at 2 o'clock, but I got to we got to focus on the budget, and that's our number one priority, you know. And we didn't get it till right recent from you guys, so we're gonna do that, and I think I can get it done in an hour and a half. So we're gonna have a 30-minute meeting Tuesday, committee members, at 3:30, and we'll, if I don't hear anything otherwise, we'll invite you back and see if there's any appetite on this committee to move this forward then. So if you can join us Tuesday at 3:30, I would appreciate it.
I appreciate that.
I'm gonna let the young lady that was raising her hand if she wants to.
It's okay, I was going to clarify the dispensing fee. I'm an independent pharmacy owner. If you have questions about the dispensing fee and how that's set up, so we can talk afterwards.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, let me see, the last order of business that I have, again, let me find my notes. I'm not very organized here, it's my fault. Can you bear with me, please? I'm going to establish a subcommittee to look at a very lengthy bill that came over. We've got a lot of bills, as I said earlier, to still look at, but House Bill 250, sponsored by Representative Darlene Taylor. I'm going to assign that to a subcommittee, and I'd like Senator Harbin to chair that subcommittee for me. And on the subcommittee, I want to appoint Senator Merritt, Senator Steele, and Senator Kirkpatrick. The bill subject matter is PEOs, or professional employment organizations. It's a pretty lengthy bill, kind of complex, looks like to me. If you all could get together and get a report back to me, hopefully before our meeting on Thursday, what is that? Is that the 20th? And we meet at 4 o'clock on Thursday the 20th. I would appreciate that very much. Is there any other business to come before the committee today? Seeing none, I wish everybody safe travels and a good weekend, and Happy St. Patrick's Day, and the meeting is adjourned.